that converted 80% plus of new lead calls into discovery calls, eliminating that chase-based follow-up for the vast majority of people who were responding to our advertising, improving the first impressions and the positioning of the advisor, of the advisory team, and increasing the lead quality as a result. They said they weren't just getting more appointments that were already scheduled on the calendar when they walked in on Monday morning. The quality of those leads was better because the process was better. That's something that you'll hear from me over and over again, that so much of my thinking goes into the systems and the processes because the processes that you use are going to drive better results. Welcome to Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors, the first and only show dedicated exclusively to helping entrepreneurial, growth-driven financial advisors book more discovery calls with qualified prospects every day of the week. I'm your host, Roy Furr, TheAdvisorCMO. Let's get into it. All right, this could end up being one of the most difficult episodes that I ever record. Not because I haven't done this before. I've recorded hundreds of videos and podcasts and trainings and so on. So it's not that I haven't done this. It's that this could be one of the most vulnerable episodes or videos or podcasts that I record. This is the story of me going from $2 billion in production with financial advisors to starting over from scratch. It's the origin story of TheAdvisorCMO. And I figured, one of my favorite podcasts back in the day was I Love Marketing with Joe Polish and Dean Jackson. And the first episode was called The One Where We Start at the Beginning. And I still remember that years later. And this is my episode, The One Where We Start at the Beginning. So in this episode, which is going to be a little bit longer than most of my episodes, I'm going to share the origin story of the CMO. I'm going to share a quick overview of my 2+ decades in performance marketing, direct response marketing where $1 is spent on the expectation that it's going to bring back at least $1 in return with a new client in tow. I'm going to share some information about my clients, some of the top marketers and financial publishers in the world, how I built a successful training business and market authority, not with financial advisors, but with direct response marketers. I'm going to share how I was recruited for financial advisor advertising in 2018. I pivoted 100% to working with financial advisors in 2023. And then how the rug was pulled out from under me this year, despite the success that I was creating with clients. And how that all led to today, where I'm rebuilding from scratch with the most powerful toolkit that I've ever had to get results, to get calls booked on your calendar, to bring new clients in the door, ideal clients, qualified clients through all sorts of different media channels, but especially those media channels that are working today and that are going to work well into the future. This episode, like I said, is going to contain some vulnerability. I'm also going to make sure that you get some valuable lessons along the way. So before we dive in, I do want to share just a quick additional resource. This is how to get more of your ideal clients eager to book discovery calls with you. Something I discovered in 2018. Really, I first applied it for financial advisor marketing in 2018 in a consultation with somebody who came to me and said, how can we get better results from these radio shows, from these TV shows that we're doing with financial advisors? And I said, this is your number one challenge. It's making those discovery calls actually something that someone is going to desire to pick up the phone, call, and book. But the reality is that I first discovered this about 10 years earlier. I was selling IT training. I was part of a company that was one of the first companies that took the physical in-person IT training classroom boot camp model and put that in videos with some of the top trainers in the country and made those videos first part of individual training packages and then part of libraries. And what I did when I was doing marketing and sales for them is I said, we have these training solutions that are a great fit for businesses or organizations. We did a lot with the government as well, military. We have these training solutions that are a great fit for these bigger IT departments, but they don't necessarily know how to figure out if these are a fit or how they're a fit for their people. And so what I did is I created this offer of a training consultation, and all the different places where it made sense that the training managers or the IT managers, the senior people within the IT department would be browsing our training. I put a little ad that said, not sure how this, or not sure what the best solution is for you, book a free training consultation to determine which one of our solutions would be a best fit for your department. And I created essentially a discovery call booking funnel. And what that did was it got the people who were the best fit for our bigger solutions to reach out to connect with me. And I ended up booking those conversations. And then pretty soon, it was month after month after month, I was getting these huge purchase orders coming in where our ideal clients were raising their hand and they're saying, I need help deciding which of your products are the best fit for me. I would have those conversations. I would help them go through the buying process and they would become customers. And I realized through that experience that making that initial call as appealing as possible, making it match as close as possible with what your prospect is trying to find out is a great way to bring your ideal new clients, your ideal new customers in the door. And so I introduced this concept to financial advisors in 2018. And when I did that, suddenly they were getting more discovery calls booked. And I'm going to share a little bit about the recent results that I generated with advisors, but I will say that having these ideal offers for these discovery calls is what made me able to generate such big results last year with the clients that I was working with. It's a simple idea. It's extremely powerful. It's just this idea of essentially what I call productizing, and I borrowed that term, productizing your discovery call offers, making them appealing. And if you'd like to learn more, I do have a 12-minute quick training video that you can just go to TheAdvisorCMO.com/discovery, and I will get that video to you. You'll be able to watch it. It's 12 minutes long, and it will explain to you exactly how this works and how it can help you get more discovery calls on your calendar every single day of the week as a financial advisor. So, quick intro. Here's where I'm at. And why, let's start with why I'm starting with an About Me episode. I was having a conversation actually earlier this week with Matt Halloran of Proudmouth, and he does podcasts for financial advisors. And he reached out to me. He's like, why, it seems like you have done some incredible things with financial advisors. Why am I just hearing about you now? And I said, well, I've been doing some things behind the scenes and I'm just coming out now. And so me answering that question for Matt is part of what inspired me to make that the first official episode of my podcast. So, I'm a new kid on the block. I'm also not a new kid. I've been in marketing for over 2 decades. I've worked with financial advisors since 2018. And this is my answer to why the hell you should listen to me and what I have to say about getting more discovery calls and growing your financial advisory. And I will say that this one is much more background and story driven, while I'm also trying to pack it with as much value as possible. Future episodes are going to be much more about what you need to do to get the results that you want. And so quickly, last year, this is the results that I helped generate with clients through specifically an agency I'll talk about in a moment. We generated thousands of leads for a handful of financial advisors around the country. They did over $2 billion in production, and that's a mix of AUM and FIA. And the most successful clients that we worked with were growing over 30% year over year. They were clients that I loved working with. And I also have lots of smaller specific success stories, which I will share a little bit later in this episode, with the value that you can get out of those, with the takeaway lessons that you can get out of those. So that's what I was doing last year and earlier this year. But today I'm starting a new brand, TheAdvisorCMO, from scratch. And So, this is the Advisor CMO origin story. It is, there was an old direct mail story about a letter that was the only copy on the outside of the envelope was deeply and irrevocably personal. And this, in a way, is a deeply and irrevocably personal episode. It's a little bit vulnerable, but I also figure, why the hell not just share my truth here? Because this is where I'm coming from, and it helps you understand why I might be able to help you as well through these episodes and through any additional relationship that might be relevant. So I do have a decent amount of background here that I have notes on that I want to share. I'm going to try and make it quick. So who was Roy Furr before he got involved with financial advisor marketing? Well, and this covers the period roughly from 2005 to 2018. First things first, I actually didn't think I'd be in business or finance. I was a marketing major my freshman year of college. Let's see, this would have been back in 2000, but I very quickly switched away from that. And I was far more interested in figuring out who the heck I was. And so I got a degree in psychology. And specifically, I was attracted to the further reaches of human nature. So I studied things like meditation, growth, human potential, transpersonal psychology, people studying spiritual traditions from around the world and understanding that. And this was before meditation and yoga were mainstream in the way that they are today. It just fascinated me, and it continues to fascinate me to this day. I was also involved with DJing and electronic music. I had the fantasy that maybe I would be a professional house DJ and tour clubs around the world and play big parties around the world. It was also before the festivals are what they are today. Yeah, still, it's hugely fun. I still produce some music in my computer, mostly out of my own interest and hobbies. But, that's not where I went. I also was a writer. I self-published a book of poetry, which, it was what it was, right? I did some performance competition, slam poetry, and that was a lot of fun. That's who I thought I was. I was also not realizing how powerful it would eventually be for me, but I was getting experience in call centers and in sales and in speaking to people and in figuring out what gets people to respond. I helped the local newspaper build their kiosk program with local stores where we would go set up, we'd offer somebody a free paper just to get them to talk to us in order to sell subscriptions to the newspaper. And I was no sales superstar at the time. I did it mostly just to get through. But hey, that's what I did before I discovered marketing. Well, in 2005, I discovered entrepreneurial direct response marketing, and it was just a whole different world than what I had seen as a marketing major. And I realized, as a marketing major, I was just thinking about Super Bowl ads, right? I was thinking about the kind of ads that are really just to entertain, that are to win advertising awards, that are to create this image, but not ads that drive results, where there's this sense of competition. Can I get the results that I'm going for? And even better, can I beat the last thing that I did that got the results? Can I do even better this time? And that tapped into the competitive part of me, the part of me that loved playing hockey, which is another hobby or sport growing up. And that part of me was just turned on by this idea of entrepreneurial direct response marketing, where I'm working with entrepreneurs, with business owners, with founders, and figuring out how to get measurable results for them. And that's how I ended up in that role in digital marketing for an IT training publisher, and then in sales as well, because my sales skills my marketing skills were rewarded on the sales side as well, as I was generating those leads with our highest value clients and customers. And while I was there, I helped triple the business in 4 years. We put them on the Inc. magazine fastest growing businesses list year after year. I learned the ropes of marketing. I learned the ropes of selling. I learned the ropes of consultative selling, of marketing that gets results. I was spending tens of thousands of dollars on paid advertising. I was doing it all. It was a small company, and we were creating big success. And that's where I was from basically 2005 to 2010. In 2010, I launched myself out there as a freelance copywriter and marketing consultant, primarily working with this small group of direct response marketers. You can think of them as internet marketers today. A lot of them were the precursors to the people who are big in internet marketing today. But I just love working in that world where the goal was to be able to create marketing results, and you were judged, you lived or died based on how effective your marketing was. And I was developing a pretty good reputation there. I moved into financial marketing, the investment newsletter business. I worked with Casey. I worked with John Malden as his business was launching their newsletters. I worked with Angel. I worked with Money Map. I worked with Agora divisions. I helped them generate tens of thousands of leads and millions in revenue from single campaigns. I was creating these just effective marketing campaigns over and over again. And that was a large part of my business, again, from 2010 to 2023 or so. That business has changed a lot recently. And, frankly, I like working with financial advisors better because in the financial publishing world, unfortunately, what you're often doing is you're attracting somebody who's saved $2,000 and they're on the verge of retirement and they're going to invest $1,000 in a stock picking service for the one stock that they think they can invest their other $1,000 in that's going to make them a millionaire. And that's the kind of promises, unfortunately, that industry has kept making. And that's the kind of promises that got them in trouble. And that's the kind of promises that made it, much more icky to me than working with financial advisors who are much more focused on more responsible, more holistic approaches to growing your wealth and to making the money that you save, that you earn throughout your lifetime, last longer and cover you through retirement. And one little highlight of that time, though, is that I was like the copywriter, the guy who wrote the marketing for an event called the Titans of Direct Response. Now, Dan Kennedy, I hope you know who he is. If you don't, he's worth knowing. He's worth studying. Dan Kennedy called this the event of the decade. It was a tribute event in memory of Marty Edelston, who was the founder of Boardroom Inc., which later rebranded as Bottom Line. They were at peak, they were a $150 million a year publisher of information about retirement, about finances, about health. And it was books and it was newsletters. And this Titans of Direct Response event is one of my most public successes. It's probably what I'm best known for in that world. And it was an incredible opportunity because the speakers there were the best of the best. They were the Titans of Direct Response. Not every Titan was there, but everyone who was there was a Titan. And the audience, all 200 or so people, I don't remember the exact count, who filled the conference room at the Stanford Marriott in Stamford, Connecticut, were the best of the best in marketing. And so the speakers were many of my heroes, which is why it was so easy to write such a compelling letter to get people to come. It was Dan Kennedy, it was Gary Bensavinga, it was Greg Rinker of Guthrie Rinker, it was Jay Abraham, Ken McCarthy, Perry Marshall, Joe Sugarman, Fred Katona, Eric Betchwell, David Deutsch, Arthur Johnson, Paris Lampropoulos, Michael Fishman, Jim Quick, Ryan Lee. And some of those names may not mean anything to you. Some of them probably do and absolutely should. They are some of the most leading up to the event 2014, they were some of the most powerful thinkers in marketing, and many of them continue to this day. And many of them I still count as great contacts. And it was hosted, I'm realizing I don't have this in my notes, but I absolutely need to give credit. It was hosted by Brian Kurtz, who's a friend for life, who was the number 2 person at Boardroom under Marty Edelston for 3 decades. And after Marty passed away, he and Dan Kennedy said, we got to do this thing that Marty's wanted to do forever. We got to bring all the best marketers in the world together and have a conversation about what works, like the fundamental principles of what works in marketing. And it was just an incredible opportunity. Also that year in 2014, I launched something called Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. And for almost 10 years, I was publishing daily emails and then daily podcast episodes, videos about marketing, about direct response, about copywriting, about how to effectively, going back to that fundamental goal of being able to spend $1 on advertising and have it bring back $1 in return with friends, ideally, and with a new client in tow. How to create profitable advertising where you're measuring the results. And, a lot of that content is still out there. It was a daily email newsletter for copywriters, marketers, and entrepreneurs with a lot of content published publicly. There was over 2 million words published on the site, hundreds of videos published on YouTube and as podcast episodes. I developed this global reputation with tens of thousands of total subscribers and website readers, 500,000 plus YouTube views. I also built the BTMS Insiders training library, which is now no longer available for any kind of registration. It's all back in the vault for right now. But there's 200 plus hours of training on effective marketing messaging, copy, strategy, all of that, and had hundreds of members to that at various times. And it was highly revered. In fact, some of the people who I'm finding in financial advisor marketing today, I know that they were readers, clients, customers, viewers, etc., training library members going back to those days. And so I feel the influence out in the world today. I also wrote a couple books, The Copywriter's Guide to Getting Paid, which is very much about copywriters and how to build a copywriting business. And then a book called The Ultimate Selling Story, which fundamentally is about how to tell stories that bring people in the door, that enable the sales process. And actually, I'm just going to share what I call the ultimate selling story in the future with you here. I'm going to share the fundamental copywriting formula behind that. And it's still something I use every single day. I also was continuing to do coaching, consulting, client work throughout this time. Again, there's a lot of overlap here in the before financial advisor marketing, but this is what was going on. This was my background. And, in the coaching and consulting, I was doing things like stepping into a business, having a conversation with them and making $500,000 breakthroughs in a single conversation, or looking at the specific marketing for different businesses and saying, these are the things that you need to change. And that goes on and it makes them millions of dollars. And as a coach, I was helping businesses just bring more clients in the door. I was helping individual, like people like me, copywriters, marketing consultants, launch and become the best in their fields, launch and create multi-million-dollar businesses. It was just what I continued to do and what I was doing leading up to connecting with financial advisors to help them with their marketing. So that brings me to 2018, when I first entered into financial advisor marketing. I was sought out by an agency owner who was serving financial advisors to do paid copy reviews, those conversations where I'd sit down with you for 30 minutes or an hour and I'd say, and you would give me the things that you're doing now. And I would say, this is exactly what you need to change to get better results. And at the time, it was primarily radio and TV messaging. It went on and it was other things like that. One of the first big breakthroughs that I introduced was something that I have already talked about in this episode. It was the productized discovery calls, because I realized that better offers change everything. If you have an offer that someone is eager to respond to, and I'll talk more about that in upcoming episodes, if you have an offer that someone is eager to respond to, it changes everything about your advertising. It makes, when you ask somebody to respond, it makes that a more compelling proposition. If you ask somebody to become a client, it makes that more compelling. And so the better your offer is, the easier everything becomes, the more profitable all of your marketing and advertising expenses become. And so you'll find that even though I talk about all the things around offers, maybe even more than I talk about offers, all of it, like the biggest lever that you can pull to become more successful in marketing your financial advisory services, or, all sorts of different services, is having a better offer and really putting the time into developing that offer, making it as appealing as possible. And so that's what I introduced in 2018. I also shared some pretty powerful copywriting lessons. I don't want to go into too much detail on any of these right now because I know that this is a long episode and it's going to be a long episode. But, one of the biggest things that a lot of financial advisors do is they make all their marketing about themselves, right? And so if I'm talking about me, and here I am in this episode, I'm breaking that rule. But you'll also notice if you pay close attention, I'm talking about you a lot as well. So if you're just talking about yourself in all of your advertising, in all of your marketing, then your prospects are like, okay, I don't care. They really are. You have to make your advertising messages about them, about solving their problem, about solving their challenges. And they only care about you in so much as you show them that you care about them, you care about the challenges that they're facing, the problems that they need to have solved, and you care about those things enough that you've developed a solution and you can help them. And then they're like, okay, tell me more, right? So make it about them. Also, don't make me think. If you talk as a financial advisor in your marketing, in your advertising, as you would talk to other experts in your field, you're not going to you're not going to resonate with your target audience. I have had a few conversations with Mark Ford, who is number 2 inside the Agora empire, which grew to $1 billion plus publishing firm, primarily serving investment, like the investment publishing world, but also some health sub companies underneath. And one of the things that Mark did was he went back and he did an analysis of renewal rates for investment newsletters. And the people that sign up for investment newsletters, I mean, some of them are doctors, some of them are in finance, some of them are lawyers that are in other kinds of revered professions where it takes a lot of education to get where you are. And there's also lots of everyman. There's Main Street millionaires, there's Main Street paupers. As Bill Bonner, the founder of Agora, like to use that term. But in speaking to that vast audience of people, what Mark found when he analyzed renewal rates of the different investment newsletters across the board was that if you analyzed the readability, the grade level, the Flesch-Kincaid score of these different newsletters, the newsletters that had a readability score above about 7th grade would have diminishing renewal rates the further they got from 7th grade. And so in college, I actually used to love to grade my papers in the sense of looking at what grade level I was writing at. And I thought it was great that my papers were like, oh, this paper in college is written at a 12th grade level or whatever. It was thick as hell and you couldn't freaking understand it, right? It took work to understand that writing. But talking about complex topics of finance and investments and all of that to people who are educated, to an educated audience, Mark found that reducing the readability level down to 7th grade, 6th grade, 5th grade, while still being able to talk about those complex topics, increase the renewal rates of those investment newsletters. And here's an important point, regardless of the profit performance of the portfolios, the investment recommendations. And so by making things more readable, people will engage more and they will be more interested in sticking around. And the same thing applies to advertising. Mark said it's a rule that if you run your marketing copy through readability and it's above grade 7, he doesn't even want to review it yet. Get it down below grade 7 before he reviews it. And honestly, he told me that 10 years ago plus, and I think that grade level is dropping today. It's not that you can never write above that level, but if you want to increase your response, if you want people more interested in doing business with you, don't make them think. Also, another lesson that Mark taught was the power of one. This particular episode is not, while it does cover a lot of ground, it's really about the origin story of the Advisor CMO. It's about my background, getting up to the point where I launched the Advisor CMO, and then what happened there that we'll talk about here in a moment. And what's going on from here forward. And what Mark said is that the best advertising always focuses on one core central idea. And this is something that I brought into, for example, designing the content for a radio show or designing the content for a TV show, that you want to really narrow in on what's that one core, most powerful, most compelling idea. What's the key benefit that you want to offer through the information that you're providing in your marketing, and that presumably would then attach to the benefit that you're able to provide through your services, right? But what's that one core central message that as soon as they resonate with that, they're going to respond? And so focusing on that. And I guess tied to the don't make me think bit is this idea of a casual expert. And the way I like to think about this is your marketing definitely should not be written, should not be created as if you are speaking to an audience of your peers. Your marketing should be written, created as if you are, let's say this, you are in the target audience for your advertising, and you happen to be at a hotel where there is a conference going on about financial services, right? And all these financial advisors are in the conference, they're hanging out, and then they're in the bar at night. And you happen to go down to the bar and sit next to one of these financial advisors at the bar, and you are just a potential, an ideal client for this financial advisor. Well, if that financial advisor is a little loose, a little casual, a little worn out after the day, so their filter is down just a little bit, but they're still an expert, and they are still trying to present themselves in a presentable, professional way, because that's kind of the mode that they're in with that conference. How does that financial advisor speak to that person? What questions do they answer? What language do they use? How much jargon do they use in having that conversation versus not? And the answer probably shouldn't be no jargon, right? And the answer shouldn't be that they're completely unprofessional, but it should be casual. It should be conversational. It should be, it should be a conversation that's focused on the person that they're speaking with. And it should be about solving their problems, right? So it's this casual expert idea of approaching your marketing messages. Also, one of the most powerful things that I created, let's say I innovated, is my PISA formula. And I definitely brought this to financial advisor marketing because I brought it to copywriting. There's an old problem, agitate, solve formula for advertising, and it's wildly effective for advertising, and it's been used for a very long time. That if you can speak to the problem of your audience, of your ideal client, you can agitate the experience of that problem, and you can offer a solution to that problem through responding to your marketing or advertising, that's a really effective way to structure your message as a marketer. And the reason it works is because of a lesson that I learned from Gary Bensavingo, one of the titans of direct response, widely considered the best living copywriter out there. He said, problems are markets. You may think of demographics, you may think of psychographics, you may think of other specific types of market targeting. But really, everybody that shares a specific problem is the market for a solution to that problem. And if you come at marketing from that perspective, it is hugely effective at being able to speak to your ideal client and offer your solution to them. So problems are markets. And so my building on the problem, agitate, solve was the PISA formula. And I've since added one additional step to that. So PISA stands for problem, agitation, invalidation, solution, action, and then my last step is R. So it's PISAR, relief. So problem, again, hey, if you're facing this problem, if you're facing this challenge, I have a solution for you. I'd like to talk to you about that solution. Now, I understand this problem. I probably understand this problem better than you. And I know that if you're experiencing this problem, I've worked with people who've had this problem over and over again. I've solved this problem 1,000 times. And I know that consistently when people are experiencing this problem, here's the emotional experience that they go through. Here's the frustrations that they have that they're going through. Here's the sense of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that come from, let's say, you're facing retirement. You have a certain amount of money saved. You want to make sure that money doesn't run out. You also realize that a lot of that money is in qualified accounts that are not taxed yet. And you're starting to realize that the tax man, not you, are going to get a huge chunk of your retirement savings. And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of doubt around that, right? That's problem agitation. Invalidation is looking at the different options that people have probably already tried if they've been in this market for any length of time, looking at the different options that they've tried and explaining why those haven't worked. And so a great one for taxes is, hey, what I'm about to tell you about taxes and retirement goes completely against what you've probably been told for most of your working career about taxes on your retirement accounts, because the people that you talk to throughout your working career about taxes on your retirement accounts is most often going to be your CPA. And your CPA, their success or failure is based on what your tax bill is this year, not your lifetime tax bill, not your future tax obligations. And so they're going to put you into accounts where you don't have to count your income this year. You can defer that income into the future and not have to pay taxes on it this year. The bad news is, if you follow Ed Slott or other people in the business, the bad news is that this is creating a retirement tax time bomb for you. That this best practice of the tax preparation industry creates a time bomb of taxes that you're going to have to face in retirement. And it's not just taxes on your retirement account, because when you take money out of your retirement account, it's going to count towards your taxable income. It could impact your IRMAA for Medicaid. It could impact, or Medicare. It could impact your Social Security taxes, the taxes that you're going to have to pay on your Social Security benefits. It can impact the amount of taxes that you're paying across the board. It can impact the tax bracket that you're finding yourself in. And so all of those things add up to all this pain associated with leaving that problem unsolved. Now, we can identify a solution for you. We can do the calculations that are required to figure out how much tax obligation you have there inside your qualified retirement accounts. We can add all that up. We can look at what that's going to, the impact that that's going to have throughout your retirement. And then we can look at different tax saving strategies that could help you reduce that tax obligation so you're not paying more than you have to. It's not about trying to get away with not paying taxes. It's about not paying more than you have to in taxes throughout your retirement. And if you want to do that, well, the first step is to book a tax saving strategy session with me where we look at your retirement accounts, we calculate those taxes, and we determine what the ideal tax saving strategies could be, or at least look at the options for you. Run all this through compliance, right? I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. But where we look at the different tax saving strategies available to you and determine you can make the decisions there, how you want to move forward. And here that's the action that you take: problem agitation, invalidation, solution. Action is to give me a call or to go to this particular scheduling form and to schedule it, right? And then relief, which we add at the end, is this sense of moving into retirement and knowing how much you've reduced your lifetime tax obligations, that suddenly you're going to have these different sources of tax-free income, or that you have significantly reduced what's going to be counted as taxable income throughout retirement. And so you can just have more confidence that moving forward into retirement, you have more money that's going to go further than you otherwise would have had without going through this process, right? And these are just things that I brought to Financial Advisor Marketing. Here's one more good one. Using market data. And I have to give credit to Chet Holmes. The Ultimate Sales Machine is a book that he wrote before he passed, way too young. And he said, when you start your presentation with market data, you get the credibility of that market data, of the source of that market data. When you start your presentations with information like the fact that Lawrence Kotlikoff, a renowned economist, calculated, analyzed that the average American, or that the vast majority of Americans, more than 9 in 10, are filing for Social Security at the wrong time, and it's costing them potentially $182,000 in lifetime income. If you open with that, then suddenly you have all that credibility associated with your message, and it makes people pay a whole lot more attention. So if that's connected to how you're going to get them in the door, wow, like suddenly they're sitting up, they're paying attention, and they are wanting to know more because they don't want to be in that 9 out of 10 of Americans that are going to miss out on $182,000 in lifetime income. So using that market data as message hook and proof elements, that's something, again, these are just different things that I was bringing to financial advisor marketing, starting as soon as I was doing these different copy reviews, consulting on that. And that was 2018 to 2023. In 2023, I went all in with financial advisors and helped create over $2 billion in production. So I was recruited to join that agency as a copywriter, as a marketing strategist. And I went from a world where I had many clients and I had my own publishing business on the side, many clients and customers, to one, I was really encouraged to go all in. I was, from the beginning, the discussion was that I was essentially number two, especially on the creative side. And I was in the succession plan for who was going to run client services at that industry, or at that agency. And, I continued to fulfill on that as my responsibility being one of making sure that I was creating breakthrough for clients. And so some of the results that we got there, we generated thousands of tracked leads. Like, we could go on. We did a lot of traditional media channels. I'll share the media channels in a minute. But one of the things that we did was we tracked the calls that were coming in. And so you could go on and you could see this call came in on this day at this time when this particular ad was running. And here was a recording of the call, what that conversation looked like. And we were able to go run reports on all of that, look at the actual responses. And so we were generating thousands of tracked leads. We also did a lot of online stuff as well. We had to get those tracked leads back from the client, but we were generating, each week, different clients would have dozens and dozens of leads that were coming in the door. The clients did over $2 billion in annual production. Again, 30% year over year growth. We were generating huge results for a handful of financial advisors around the country. We worked with one advisor in each geographic market. And when we worked with them, we were creating advertising marketing in different media channels. We did TV shows and ads. I know exactly how those shows are structured, how they're written, how they drive response. We did radio show content and ads. We did online and print advertorials. I created some of the biggest successes there. I'm actually going to share that in a minute, so I'll shut up about that right now. We did digital advertising. We did email marketing. We did direct mail. We did webinars. We actually created webinar campaigns that were the second most profitable source of clients for our client, behind only referrals. And you know how valuable referrals are. You know how profitable referrals are. Well, webinars were the number two, second most profitable source of clients behind that. I really pushed this free report strategy to get people to raise their hand. You've seen it with Fisher. It works. It's effective. It's a way to get people to raise their hand and to start conversations. I can tell you specifically that there are a certain percentage of people who request a free report who then go on and are willing to have a conversation with you in a certain period of time. And it's going to vary based on where you actually got their attention and got them to request that free report. We served major markets around the country: Chicago, Dallas, Boston, Seattle, Phoenix, Detroit, Tampa, St. Louis, Salt Lake City, Indianapolis, Nashville. And some of the specific wins that I really initiated on my own in serving this agency's clients. I wrote the number one and number two most effective appointment generating advertorials for the client, plus the number one and number two most effective lead generating advertorials for the client. And these were articles that we placed in certain places online and that were just driving results. One of these generated 400 leads in the first month and is referred to as Old Bessie, who keeps on giving. It's a loving name the client gave to it. I designed and implemented a new call center process that, instead of creating a chase game where as soon as somebody called in response to the advertising, the advisor and their team was suddenly having to chase that person down and try and get a hold of them and try and get them to agree to come in for an appointment or try and get them to agree to a discovery call, right? So I designed and implemented this new call center process that converted 80% plus of new lead calls into discovery calls, eliminating that chase-based follow-up for the vast majority of people who were responding to our advertising, improving the first impressions and the positioning of the advisor, of the advisory team, and increasing the lead quality as a result. They said they weren't just getting more appointments that were already scheduled on the calendar when they walked in on Monday morning. The quality of those leads was better because the process was better. That's something that you'll hear from me over and over again, that so much of my thinking goes into the systems and the processes because the processes that you use are going to drive better results. And the messaging is just the surface dressing of all of that, right? The messaging is a part of it, but the fundamental systems and processes that you use are going to make a huge difference in the success that you're able to create. I turned multiple one-shot or limited marketing and advertising systems, such as webinars, lead magnets, etc., into comprehensive campaigns. I would map out an entire ideal campaign structure, and then we'd create all the deliverables for that. And so we attracted and reactivated more leads through those effective campaigns. I helped test new marketing channels, often driving that testing, new messaging, new strategy that went on to generate hundreds of leads and appointment requests that the clients would not have otherwise achieved. And so they were seeing more appointments, they were seeing more production based on these strategies that I was pushing out there. And, I was doing this, I was meeting with clients for on-site strategy days, initiating and influencing major strategic initiatives that would go on and unlock new and highly valuable lead sources for the clients. So that's what I was doing 2023 to 2025, going all in with financial advisors, generating that $2 billion in production. And then my world turned upside down. And I hope some of you get that Hamilton reference. In summer 2025, everything was mostly looking good. There was huge lead generation successes. We generated lots of success for clients. They were happy with us. The biggest clients who I was tasked with putting the most attention on because they were, we were co-creating the most success. And I will 100% give credit across the board. The agency had a lot going on. Before working with me, starting in 2018, up to 2023, when they brought me in and asked me to commit, go all in with them. And the agency had a lot of success going on. The clients had a lot of success going on. Everything, we were co-creating this success. All of these things are built together, right? And we were having multi-year succession plan conversations for the agency. How can I help run this agency when the founder retires, right? Until, and I'll give you a little bit of context here. And I really don't want to play the blame game. That's not, I study like Marcus Aurelius, the old teachings of Stoics, and it's not healthy for me. I also study positive psychology, growth psychology, cognitive psychology. It's not healthy for me to blame somebody. It's not, I just want to focus on the future, but this is what happened, right? So 2025, there's a lot of market volatility, and it was forcing us to adapt. So we were identifying new messaging, new opportunities based on political changes, economic changes, all of that. There were challenges, right? But we were addressing them head on. We were having conversations on the regular. We were saying, okay, what's going on? How are results changing? What can we test? What happens when we test these new messages, right? Do all of that to really try to identify, one of the wonderful and terrible things about marketing is that the market is always changing. What people care about is always changing, especially if you're in something like finance where it's so dependent on, what's going on in society at large, plus what's going on with economic policies, plus what's going on with the market and business. And when there's all these different factors, like it's wonderful and terrible at the same time that things are changing all the time, right? And so you have to be on top of that. You have to say, okay, how can we adapt to these changes? What new messages are going to work? Because what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. And so today, you're always having to test to see what's going to work today and what's going to work tomorrow. But I will say that clients were ecstatic with me. We'd gotten back from a client meeting and they said it was their best meeting ever with the agency before I was there and during the time that I was there when I met with them multiple times. I had confidence in the future of the agency. Clients had confidence in the future of the agency. And importantly, when you looked, we were getting results. We were finding ways to get results for clients. And with what happened next, there's definitely two sides of the story. I can't speak for the client, the agency founder and owner that I was working with. I don't fully understand it. I do know that during the challenges, I was experiencing from my side what I felt like was I don't know, just challenging or bad client behavior, which was everything was being questioned 5 times before it was being tested. Things were being rewritten. Hey, if I'm working with you as a client, you're hiring me as an expert, right? If you're my client, you're hiring me as an expert. Just like as a financial advisor, if someone is coming to you and they're saying, you are the trusted professional who I am asking to help me run my finances throughout retirement, right? If the moment things are uncomfortable for them, they come in and take over your job, that's a bad client, right? And so this agency, which was actually my client, it was a contract, but I was basically all in with them. I struggled to be able to do my job, especially during the volatility of 2025. And I struggled to have the resources that I needed to achieve the goals that we were trying to achieve together as agency. When things were great, I mean, there was a lot of resources. There was a lot of being willing to follow my lead. But then one Monday morning, after a lot of conversations that I thought we were working through, and a lot of I'm going to be honest with you, if you're doing something that doesn't work for me, I'm going to be honest with you, right? One Monday morning, they said, you know what, we're done. I'm no longer interested in having you take over this agency. And in fact, despite all the success that you've been helping my clients create and that we've been creating together with the clients, just not interested anymore. Okay. Well, thankfully, financially, I'm in a good position, right? But suddenly I was at a spot where I had taken this entire momentum that I'd built since 2005, really, doing all this freelance stuff, doing this publishing stuff, and invested it in this agency to serve their clients. And, I was having a great time serving the clients, but then suddenly that was cut off. And so I said, all right, it's time for me to do something new. And I launched TheAdvisorCMO. And so this is summer 2025 and beyond. And I know that I am really good at generating leads for financial advisors. And so I said, all right, if I have to start from scratch with where I am now, with all the network that I have available in the marketing world, all the different service providers that I can spin up and create a virtual agency to serve clients, all of my own strategies, like providing, heck, as I was talking to clients, I would have multiple clients who said, hey, we need a CMO, Roy, and it was always a joke. It was always in the presence of the agency founder. We'd really like to have you as the CMO. And it's like, no, I can't do that. In fact, I can't work with any of those clients for 5 years. And that's fine. It is what it is, right? But they would say, we, well, we want you to be our CMO, right? Like we want you to bring your strategy into our business so that we can benefit from it like all the time, right? Because I'm really good at it. And I can go into a business and I can say, for example, the call center thing was one where I heard some calls and I'm like, this is not working. The call centers are just like, yeah, why are you calling? No, it's how call centers handle calls should be more like bumper bowling, where the call center has a very specific process that they have to follow and a very specific outcome that they're supposed to achieve on that call. And that's how we went from, they were like taking messages and having people at the financial advisory have to follow up and chase those people, into actually scheduling a call during the call with the call center and having that client be on the calendar of a member of the advisor's team, so that the new potential client knows that they're going to get a call at a specific time and they need to have their information handy and they need to be ready to talk about their finances on that call, right? And I'm able to look at what a business is doing and say, no, these are the three things you need to fix. And that could have a $500,000 difference, $1 million business difference in revenue. And of course, if we want to multiply the revenue numbers, we can talk about production, right? So my number one goal in launching the Advisor CMO is to help you put more discovery calls on your calendar every day. And I'm building this from scratch, really built around that. What are the effective approaches, effective systems, effective marketing that we can do, that I can show you how to do, or that we can do together, that's going to put more discovery calls on your calendar every single day? So it's the same proven strategies, methods, and messaging that I was introducing in 2018 that I was applying full-time from 2023 to early to mid 2025. One great thing is that I'm no longer limited by the old agency's linear media specialty. What does linear media mean? Well, it's broadcast TV and radio especially. Those mediums are slowly dying. I saw it. Radio was on the decline for years. TV is on the decline and is being replaced with on-demand programming. So people are streaming. They're turning on the same TV screen, the same, right? But instead of flipping between channels, they are flipping between potential programs they can watch that match their ideal viewing in that moment, whatever they feel like watching right now. And then they press play and it's just that thing. And so something like buying a TV show on Sunday morning coming out of a particular talk show, you're not going to get that spillover viewership when linear media is dying, when broadcast TV and radio are dying. And that agency was very specialized in that, and we did really well with that, and we were generating lots of results with that. We were also doing other things online, but really that was where their strength lied. Well, I'm not limited by that anymore. And so I can continue to innovate and get results for financial advisors based on what's working now, based on what's going to work moving forward into the future. And I'm looking forward to creating, what I really see as the future of financial advisor marketing, drawing on everything that I know works. I study books that are now over 100 years old for the fundamental principles of marketing and advertising. For example, go back to Claude Hopkins' Scientific Advertising, one of the most important books on internet marketing, and it was published, I think, in 1921 was the first year, if I'm remembering correctly. Well, what Claude Hopkins said was that advertising is sales in print. It's salesmanship in print. I modify that using modern language. It's sales through media. Advertising should be designed to achieve the same goal as sales. Advertising should be judged on whether or not it succeeds in generating the same goal as sales. The difference is that with sales, you have one-to-one conversations. So if you're doing sales prospecting, you're going out and you're trying to speak to people one-on-one and have those conversations. If you're doing advertising or marketing, what you're doing is you're packaging up those sales messages and you're putting them out there in media that multiplies your efforts by 1,000 or more, right? And so I'm applying those old principles that still apply just as much today if I'm recording this, and putting it on YouTube and putting it on a podcast as they applied for Claude Hopkins when he was writing ads that were just going into newspapers and so on, right? And so in the upcoming episodes of this podcast, I'm planning to pull back the curtain on how I get results, even more than I have today. The different episodes are going to be longer or shorter based on the content, trying to keep that relevant. I also plan to connect with more and bring in more industry experts out to give you outside insights and perspectives, curated people that I believe are going to bring value to you, but that are still going to be in fulfillment of my number one goal, which is helping you put more discovery calls on your calendar every single day. And so that's what's coming in this podcast. Just to quickly wrap up, I would encourage you to subscribe and find me on LinkedIn. I'm Roy Furr on LinkedIn, TheAdvisorCMO. You can look me up there. And don't forget, you can get that better discovery calls training by going to TheAdvisorCMO.com/discovery. You can get access. It's a 12-minute training. It's yours for free. And it's full of value. I'm Roy Furr. I'm the Advisor CMO, and I will see you again in the next episode. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Daily Discovery Calls for Financial Advisors. If you got value from this episode, I'd absolutely love it if you do me the favor of sharing it with one other person who you think would also find it valuable. It's how the show can grow and how I can keep bringing this value to you. And if you want to learn more about how you can book more discovery calls with your ideal clients, go to TheAdvisorCMO.com/podcast.